The galaxy had long whispered of a warrior whose name alone made stars shiver. Zarkath, the scourge of 12 systems, moved like a shadow through the void, leaving planets burned and empires in ruin. His armor gleamed like blackened sunlight, and his eyes held no mercy. To encounter him was to meet death itself, and to survive was considered impossible. And yet, on the small, overlooked planet of Arendor, a human girl named Leora lived in silence. No one remembered exactly why she never spoke. Some said her parents had been lost in a pirate raid. Others believed the silence had been chosen, a shield against the chaos of the world. Leora's eyes, a deep amber that seemed to capture every last glimmer of sunlight, spoke volumes where her voice never reached. Arendor was a quiet place, where the wind hummed through crystal forests and rivers sang beneath twin moons. Leora spent her days tending gardens that glowed with bioluminescent flowers, growing food that nourished her village, and learning the patterns of the stars. She knew every curve of the rivers and the secret places where the rare silver foxes played. In all the galaxy's tumult, she was merely a whisper. The first sign of the coming storm was subtle, a streak of darkness across the sky, moving faster than any ship known to her people. When the ground trembled and a shadow eclipsed the twin suns, the villagers panicked. Leora, calm as always, stood at the edge of the crystal cliff and watched. Zarkath had arrived. He descended in his ship, a fortress of black metal that swallowed light. Doors hissed open and the ground shook as his armored boots touched the soil. The villagers fled, screaming prayers to gods who may have forgotten them. Only Leora stayed, her amber eyes fixed on the warrior. Zarkath noticed her immediately. It was rare, almost unheard of, for humans to meet his gaze without trembling. He paused, lifting his jagged blade, a weapon said to slice through the strongest alloys, and studied her. Most creatures would cower. Most would flee. But she stood unmoving, serene, as if the universe itself had placed her there for this moment. A faint smile crossed Leora's lips. She did not speak, but her silence was not fear. It was understanding. She knew what Zarkath represented. She had read the stories that traitors whispered. Entire fleets crushed, worlds reduced to cinders, warriors unmatched. And yet something within her dared to defy the tales. Something human, fragile yet unyielding. Zarkath struck first. His blade hummed with deadly energy as it cut through the air toward her. Every instinct screamed at Leora to move, but she didn't. Instead, she bent slightly, letting the blade pass just above her shoulder, grazing the sleeve of her tunic. The sound of metal slicing air was deafening, but she did not flinch. The warrior's confusion grew. No one had ever dared resist him. Not with skill, not with wit, not with silence. His strikes became faster, more precise, but Leora danced with the wind. Her movements natural, almost instinctual, as if she and the planet shared a secret rhythm. Zarkath stopped, frustration creeping into his stance. He had conquered entire civilizations, yet here was a girl who wielded nothing but her silence. And still, she challenged him. For the first time, he hesitated. A moment so brief it could have been mistaken for nothing. But in that moment, Leora saw an opening. A flicker of a smile, sharper than any blade, danced on her face. She did not attack with strength, only with movement, intuition, and presence. The ground seemed to favor her. Wind shifted to her advantage. Even the stars, reflected in the rivers behind her, shimmered like an unseen ally. Zarkath roared in frustration, striking again, harder, faster, yet every attempt was countered, not by brute force, but by something entirely alien to him. She was a human, yes, but humans carried a certain unpredictability. They were fragile yet resilient. They could falter and rise again. They could be silenced yet speak volumes. The first chapter of this encounter ended not with victory or death, but with a pause. Zarkath lifted his blade, breathing heavily behind his mask, staring at the human girl who refused to bow. And Leora, silent, still, unwavering, met his gaze. Somewhere deep within, the galaxy shivered, not at the promise of destruction, but at the hint of something far greater, the quiet strength of a human heart that refused to be broken. The wind on Arendor carried a heavy tension after Zarkath's first assault. The village below had emptied, and the once lively crystal forests were now silent. shimmering under twin moons that cast long shadows. Leora remained on the cliff, her amber eyes locked on the dark figure of the warrior. She still did not speak, yet her presence was louder than any shout. Zarkath stood several meters away, the jagged edges of his armor reflecting the moonlight like shards of obsidian. His chest rose and fell beneath the black plates, each breath a thunderous echo of frustration. No creature had ever resisted him so effortlessly. His blade, usually a symbol of absolute domination, seemed almost inert against her calm. He circled her slowly, studying the girl who had no weapons, no defenses, no allies. Every instinct screamed that she was weak, mortal, disposable. Yet something about her unsettled him. There was no fear, no hesitation, no instinctual desire to survive. Only quiet observation, almost like she had been waiting for him. "Why do you not flee?" He finally demanded, his voice a harsh metallic rasp, carried on the wind. Leora did not answer. She tilted her head slightly, and the faintest flicker of a smile graced her lips. That silence, that refusal, spoke more than any words could. Zarkath's frustration grew. He struck again, faster this time, the air splitting with the force of his blows. But Leora did not dodge in the conventional sense. She shifted her weight, her movements fluid and deliberate, almost in harmony with the ground beneath her feet. Every strike that should have been fatal passed like water around her. Inside the warrior's mind, confusion bloomed. He had studied countless species, mastered countless battle strategies, yet this human girl broke every rule. She did not attack, yet she survived. She did not resist, yet she commanded presence. She was an enigma, a paradox. Leora's thoughts were silent but vivid. She knew the stories, knew the fear that surrounded this being. Yet she did not feel fear. She had lived through storms that tore families apart, through nights when the stars themselves seemed to abandon her. And through it all, she had learned the same lesson her parents once whispered. Strength is not always in the hand that strikes. Sometimes it is in the heart that endures. As Zarkath prepared another assault, Leora's amber eyes glimmered with determination. The calm that enveloped her was not empty, it was strategy. Humans were fragile, yes, but their greatest strength was their ability to endure, to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. And Zarkath, for all his power, had never faced endurance like hers. The battle shifted subtly but unmistakably. Zarkath's strikes became sharper, more aggressive, almost desperate. Leora did not counter with brute force, but with timing, patience, and intuition. She moved with precision, yet it was as if she were dancing with the wind itself. Every step, every tilt of her body, every glance at the shifting moon seemed intentional. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. The concept of time became meaningless. Zarkath's armor was scuffed, and his breath grew heavier. He had never faced a fight that required more than physical skill. And in that moment he realized that humans were unlike anything he had known. They were weak, yes, but their fragility contained something profound, an unshakable will. A faint sound carried across the cliffs, a whisper of wind, a rustle of crystal leaves, and Leora's eyes softened. She understood the weight of her opponent's history, the loneliness that power brought, and yet she felt no pity. Instead, she recognized an opportunity. Even the mightiest warrior could be unbalanced by the unexpected, the unfamiliar, the human heart. Zarkath, sensing her stillness, lunged with all his might. The blade arced, hungry and merciless. Leora's body responded instinctively, moving not to strike but to survive. She twisted, barely avoiding the fatal edge, and at that precise moment, her foot caught on a crystal root. The movement, unintended yet perfect, caused the ground to tremble slightly. The tremor was subtle yet enough. The air shifted. The balance of the warrior faltered, and for a split second Leora saw it. The faintest crack in the armor of the galaxy's deadliest being. It was not victory. Not yet. But it was enough. A hint, a whisper, a promise that a human could endure what gods and monsters could not. And in that quiet, terrifying pause, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The night on Arendor deepened. Twin moons hung low, casting silver paths across the crystal forests and rivers below. Leora stood motionless on the cliff, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of the bioluminescent flora at her feet. She did not speak, and yet every movement she made was deliberate, a subtle dialogue between her and the world around her. Zarkath, the warrior who had conquered countless worlds, now found himself unsettled by the simplest human presence. He adjusted his stance, scanning, calculating, trying to anticipate her next move. But humans were not predictable. That had always been their weakness, and yet in Leora, that unpredictability became a weapon. Hours of silent confrontation had passed. The warrior's strikes had grown more aggressive, but Leora's reactions had become sharper, almost instinctual. It was as if she had learned to read not his body, but the flow of the air, the rhythm of the ground, the whisper of the wind. Each step she took was a calculated harmony of patience and reaction. Zarkath growled, lowering his blade slightly. "Why do you not fight?" he demanded. His voice, usually enough to break the will of the strongest warriors, faltered slightly against her calm. Leora tilted her head again, amber eyes steady and unwavering. She did not strike, she did not flee. Her silence was a shield, a mirror reflecting the futility of his aggression. And in that reflection, Zarkath felt something unfamiliar. Hesitation. The warrior lunged forward again, faster than ever. His blade sang through the air, a razor of pure energy designed to cut through steel and bone alike. Leora's feet shifted, gliding over crystal roots, her body bending in ways that seemed effortless yet deliberate. She avoided death not through strength, but through timing, intuition, and sheer focus. For the first time, Zarkath hesitated mid-strike. The human girl was not only surviving, she was learning from him, adapting faster than any of his past opponents. Her mind, quiet and observant, calculated angles, balance, and momentum. She turned her silence into a weapon more potent than any blade. Unpredictability. Then came a small sound, a crack beneath his boot. Leora's eyes flicked downward. The crystal beneath the warrior's weight had fractured slightly, releasing a tiny cascade of glowing shards. It was almost nothing, but enough to disturb Zarkath's footing just for a fraction of a second. That fraction became a lifetime. Leora moved like the wind itself, silent, deliberate, but no longer merely avoiding. She shifted her body in a series of calculated, almost imperceptible movements that forced Zarkath to stumble. The warrior's armor clanged against the crystals as he barely regained balance. A small, ironic smile played on Leora's lips. She did not strike, but she had done something far more extraordinary. She had unsettled the galaxy's deadliest warrior. In that tiny imbalance, she glimpsed a truth humans had always known but many had underestimated. The mind, the spirit, the intuition. These could triumph where strength alone could not. Zarkath recovered quickly, but the realization had settled deep. This human girl, fragile, voiceless, unarmed, had turned his own power into hesitation. She had transformed unpredictability into advantage. He had never faced an opponent like her, and a part of him, one he had long buried beneath conquest and fear, felt awe. The warrior adjusted his blade, his movements sharper, more controlled, but Leora was no longer reacting. She was anticipating. Her silence allowed her mind to map the battle in ways Zarkath could not perceive. Every subtle twitch, every micro-shift in balance, every breath became a clue. She was a puzzle he could not solve by force. For the first time in his life, Zarkath felt fear, not for his life, but for the possibility that this fragile human could survive where countless others had fallen. And in that fear, a seed of respect took root. The cliff beneath them trembled once more as a faint, eerie hum rose from the crystal forests. Leora's eyes widened slightly. She sensed it before she understood it, a latent energy pulsing beneath the planet, responding to the unfolding struggle. The universe itself seemed to lean toward her, subtle and unseen, whispering possibilities no weapon could measure. Zarkath's mask reflected her amber gaze, and for a heartbeat, the galaxy held its breath. This silent human girl, without a single word, without a single weapon, had forced the deadliest warrior in known space to reconsider everything he knew about strength. And in that silence, In that brief pause, a shift began, one that would ripple across stars, one that would change the destiny of Arendor, and perhaps the galaxy itself. For Leora, the battle was not just survival. It was proof that the smallest, quietest hearts could wield the greatest power. The moons of Arendor glimmered faintly as dawn approached, painting the crystal forests and rivers with soft, trembling light. The night's silence was broken only by the faint hum of distant winds and the echoing weight of Zarkath's armored footsteps. He had fought countless battles, yet this girl, was unlike any other. Leora stood on the cliff, her amber eyes reflecting the first rays of the twin suns. She did not speak, she did not strike, but she observed every breath of wind, every shift in the warrior's stance, every subtle change in the environment. Her silence was not emptiness. It was awareness sharpened to its highest point. Zarkath's black armor gleamed under the twin suns as he approached. His blade, jagged and lethal, was ready to carve through flesh and stone alike, and yet he hesitated. The hesitation was small, almost imperceptible, but it marked a shift. He had begun to realize something humans themselves often fail to grasp. Strength alone was not victory. Adaptation, perception, and ingenuity were equally powerful. "You do not fear me," Zarkath said, his voice low, almost a growl. "No one survives me without terror in their eyes." Leora's lips did not move. Her gaze was steady, unyielding, yet her mind raced with thoughts. She knew Zarkath's history. The planets crushed beneath his ships, the armies annihilated by his blade. But she also knew something more important. Humans had survived far worse odds, far crueler fates. Survival was not about strength alone. It was about courage, creativity, and the ability to see what others overlooked. The battle began anew, but this time, Leora's movements were more than instinct. She shifted with intention, drawing Zarkath's attention and then using the environment to her advantage. Loose crystal formations, small ridges, and the soft hum of the wind became tools. Every step, every tilt, every breath became part of a silent strategy no warrior could anticipate. Zarkath struck, faster and deadlier than before. His blade sliced through the air, aiming to end the encounter in one lethal strike, but Leora anticipated, ducking slightly, letting his momentum carry him forward. He stumbled, his balance disrupted by a subtle slope in the cliff and the glimmering crystals beneath his boots. The warrior's eyes narrowed. No one had ever made him falter this way. No one. And yet the girl had done it without weapons, without armor, without the roar of battle. She had fought with something far more powerful. Perception. Leora's amber eyes scanned him, her mind calculating possibilities and outcomes. Humans were fragile, yes, but their minds were resilient. They could turn disadvantage into opportunity, weakness into strength, silence into command. In the briefest moments, she discerned patterns in Zarkath's movements, predicting his strikes, learning his timing, understanding the gaps no one else could see. Zarkath growled, swinging with more force, more aggression, but Leora's calm persisted. She moved not to fight, but to survive, and in surviving, she began to turn the tide. His strikes began to miss, glancing off the environment, stumbling on the uneven terrain, clashing with the unintended defenses that nature itself seemed to offer her. For the first time, the warrior felt exhaustion, not of the body alone, but of the mind. To face someone who could anticipate, adapt, and endure in ways no enemy had ever done was exhausting in a way strength could not compensate for. And humans, small as they seemed, possessed an endurance that even gods struggled to overcome. In a flash of insight, Leora saw the opening. Not in her strength, for she had none, but in his overconfidence. His strikes were deadly, precise, but they followed the rhythm of aggression, predictable to one who understood the subtle flow of battle. And humans, she knew, could exploit rhythm with patience. She shifted just enough, and his momentum carried him past her. He stumbled toward the edge of the cliff, a rare crack forming beneath his boots. The warrior's eyes widened just for a moment as the realization hit him. The human girl was no ordinary opponent. She was a force that could not be measured by weapons or armies alone. And in that brief pause, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The quiet human, unarmed and silent, had turned a battle that should have been over before it began into a test of resilience, ingenuity, and will. Zarkath gritted his teeth beneath his mask. For the first time he felt not triumph but challenge. And challenge, he knew, was something humans often used far better than he had imagined. Leora, still silent, stood her ground. She did not celebrate. She did not speak. She only waited, watching, breathing, understanding. The battle was far from over. But the first truth had been revealed. Humans were not just fragile creatures. They were unpredictable, resilient, and capable of turning weakness into power in ways no warrior could anticipate. And the galaxy, vast and endless, had yet to see what that power could truly accomplish. The sun rose higher over Arendor, scattering golden light across the fractured cliffs and glowing rivers. Leora's amber eyes caught every shimmer, every reflection in the crystal landscape. She remained silent still, yet the air around her seemed to pulse with quiet purpose. Today the battle would change. Zarkath, the feared conqueror of 12 systems, had never faced a human who could adapt so quickly, anticipate so intuitively, and endure so completely. His strikes, once precise and terrifying, now clashed with unexpected obstacles, nature itself subtly aiding her. Every step he took seemed to meet resistance, not from strength but from perception and timing. "You are resilient," Zarkath muttered, almost to himself. His voice, usually commanding, trembled with unease. "No one should survive me like this." Leora did not answer. She did not need to. Her silence was louder than words. Every move, every tilt of her body, every glance at the shifting shadows and sunlight became a message he could not interpret. The warrior's mind, trained to dominate, now wrestled with uncertainty. Hours passed in a deadly rhythm, blade against air, instinct against intuition. Zarkath's strikes grew heavier, more desperate. Leora moved with the patience of the earth itself, fluid, careful, yet unstoppable. She had learned the patterns of his aggression, and she began to exploit them with subtle shifts, leading him toward missteps. Then the turning point came. Zarkath lunged, a strike meant to end the battle instantly. Leora had anticipated this, but not merely by dodging. She guided his momentum toward a fractured crystal ridge along the cliff. The edge, invisible to him in the heat of combat, gave way slightly beneath his boot. His momentum carried him forward, stumbling, just enough for Leora to shift position. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Zarkath's balance faltered, and in that brief window, Leora's mind worked like lightning. She was not strong, she was not armored, yet she could move with the precision of 1,000 calculations. Humans were small, fragile, but they had one edge the deadliest warriors rarely understood: adaptability. She stepped aside, allowing his overconfidence to carry him forward, and the ground beneath him gave a small resounding crack. The warrior's eyes widened, not in pain but in shock. No one had ever used the environment against him so effectively, without weapons, without magic, without advanced technology, just presence, awareness, and instinct. Zarkath recovered quickly, but something inside him had changed. The unyielding conqueror, feared across galaxies, now faced a truth that no weapon could erase. Humans were unpredictable. Their minds were alive with creativity, their hearts capable of resilience far beyond physical strength. And this human girl, silent and fragile in appearance, had proven it. Leora's amber eyes flicked to the cliff's edge, then back at him. She did not attack. She merely moved with purpose, every step a silent declaration. "I endure. I adapt. I survive." Zarkath's strikes continued, but they carried hesitation now, the shadow of uncertainty creeping into the rhythm of his attacks. Leora, in contrast, moved with clarity and focus. Each dodge, each subtle shift became a strategy, turning defense into an unspoken offense. Humans, fragile as they were, had one weapon stronger than any blade: the ability to endure, to think, to turn disadvantage into advantage. Then came the moment of recognition. The warrior, exhausted but unwilling to admit it, faltered mid-strike. Leora, sensing it, did not attack. She did not need to. Her presence alone was a challenge to his domination. a proof of human resilience that no blade could break. The universe seemed to pause, the wind whispering across the crystal forests as if acknowledging her quiet strength. In that instant, Zarkath understood. Conquest alone was not enough. Strength alone could not guarantee victory. Against a mind that adapted, a heart that endured, a spirit that refused to break, even the deadliest warrior could be challenged. Even humbled, Leora's amber eyes glimmered softly, the sun reflecting like fire in their depths. She was fragile, yes. Silent, yes. Unarmed, yes. But she was human. And that, the warrior realized with a flicker of awe, was enough. The battle was far from over, but the first true shift had occurred. The silent human girl had turned fear into hesitation, aggression into uncertainty, and in doing so, had begun to crush the myth of the galaxy's deadliest warrior. And somewhere deep within the galaxy, stars seemed to shine brighter, as if witnessing a quiet revolution, one born of courage, resilience, and the indomitable human spirit. The twin suns of Arendor had climbed high into the sky, casting long, fractured reflections across the crystal cliffs and rivers. Zarkath's armor glinted sharply, but the warrior's usual aura of invincibility had begun to waver. Leora's amber eyes followed every movement, every breath, every shift of his stance. She had learned to read him as if he were an open book, and now she was beginning to write her own chapter of the fight. The warrior lunged, blade slicing through air with lethal precision. But Leora no longer merely dodged. She moved with foresight, guiding him toward the edges of fractured cliffs and unstable crystal formations. Each misstep forced him to compensate, breaking the rhythm he had relied on for centuries. Zarkath's frustration boiled beneath the armor. You should be dead," he growled, his voice trembling with disbelief. "No human survives me." Leora's gaze softened slightly, but her stance remained firm. She had no words, no weapons, yet every fiber of her being radiated resolve. She did not need to shout, for her actions spoke with a clarity far louder than any voice. Humans endured, adapted, and turned weakness into strength. And she was proving it now with every step, every glance, every movement. The cliffside trembled under the weight of the battle. Leora, anticipating the subtle fractures, led Zarkath toward a narrow ridge where the crystal beneath his boots was thin and brittle. His strikes became erratic, heavier, more desperate. He was still the deadliest warrior in the galaxy, but even the deadliest could falter against ingenuity and precision. With a slight shift of her weight, Leora forced the warrior to misstep. One boot slid along a brittle crystal shard, sending him off balance. Zarkath lunged to recover, but the ground betrayed him again. Each misstep chipped away not at his armor, but at his confidence, the one thing even the strongest warriors could not afford to lose. Leora's amber eyes glimmered as she calculated the next moves in an unspoken strategy. She had no weapons, yet she wielded far more than steel: intuition, perception, timing, and the quiet power of humanity itself. The wind whispered through the crystal forests, guiding her, hinting at possibilities that no one could anticipate. Zarkath roared in frustration, striking with renewed fury. The ground trembled under his blows, shards of crystal scattering into the air like frozen stars. And yet Leora moved with a quiet elegance, not attacking, but leading him into patterns of his own making. Every swing, every thrust, every desperate lunge was redirected by her awareness. Her patience, her resilience. For the first time, the warrior felt the raw weight of fear, not for his life, but for his legacy. He had conquered worlds, armies, and civilizations, yet this human girl had survived what should have been an instant defeat. She was unarmed, fragile, silent, and yet utterly unbroken. Then the final misstep came. Zarkath, overconfident and exhausted, struck toward her with a powerful, sweeping blow. Leora had anticipated it, but she did not dodge entirely. Instead, she guided him subtly toward the fractured edge of the cliff. His own momentum betrayed him. One boot slid over brittle crystal, sending him staggering toward the abyss. The warrior's eyes widened in disbelief as the ground crumbled beneath him. Leora remained silent, her stance firm, her gaze steady. She did not strike, she did not celebrate. She simply endured. allowing the environment and the warrior's own hubris to do what brute strength alone could never accomplish. Zarkath recovered barely in time. His balance precarious, his movements slowed by exhaustion and miscalculation. For the first time in countless battles he hesitated. And in that hesitation, Leora saw the truth of humanity. Fragile, unarmed, silent, yet capable of turning the unstoppable into the vulnerable. Her amber eyes met his behind the dark visor of his helmet. No words were exchanged, yet the message was clear. Strength alone was not victory. Power alone was not domination. Against ingenuity, adaptability, and the quiet resolve of a human heart, even the deadliest warrior could falter. The universe seemed to pause, the wind carrying whispers through the crystal forests as if acknowledging a new truth. A silent human girl had begun to break the unbreakable. And Zarkath, the conqueror of 12 systems, the scourge of galaxies, now faced a reality he had never imagined. That even the mightiest could be humbled by a mind unyielding and a heart unbroken. The battle was nearing its climax. Leora had proven one thing beyond question. Humans were fragile in body but unyielding in spirit. And in that realization, the galaxy itself trembled, for the impossible had begun. The air on Arendor shimmered under the twin suns, a delicate balance between light and shadow. The cliff's edge, fractured and trembling, bore witness to a confrontation unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Zarkath, the feared conqueror whose name had silenced entire worlds, now teetered precariously, his once absolute confidence shattered by a single human girl. Leora stood, silent on the firmest patch of crystal, her amber eyes steady, unwavering and full of quiet resolve. She had endured, adapted, and survived every strike, every lunge, every attempt to dominate her. She had no weapons, no armor, and no allies. Yet in her silence she commanded more power than any blade could wield. The warrior's black armor glinted sharply, his jagged blade raised, but it no longer radiated invincibility. It reflected hesitation. Zarkath's mind, trained for conquest, could not comprehend the truth he now faced. Humans were fragile, yet their resilience, ingenuity, and spirit made them capable of the impossible. You are not like any other, Zarkath rasped, his voice almost breaking beneath the weight of exhaustion and disbelief. No one should survive me. Leora did not respond. She did not need to. Her silence was her answer. Every slight movement, every deliberate stance spoke louder than words ever could. Her endurance, her patience, and her intuition had done what strength and terror could not. She had unsettled the unconquerable. Zarkath lunged once more, desperation now driving his attack. This strike was faster, more furious than any before. Yet Leora, reading the rhythm of his aggression, did not simply dodge. She redirected him. Her movements were subtle, precise, and flawless, guiding him toward the cliff's fractured edge. Nature itself seemed to bend to her will, the slight tremors of crystal beneath his boots, the wind whispering at just the right angles, all part of a strategy that required no weapon other than her human mind. The warrior's balance faltered. His eyes widened behind the dark visor of his helmet as the cliff's edge crumbled beneath him. Zarkath's immense strength and centuries of experience were useless against the ingenuity and quiet determination of a single human girl. Time seemed suspended. Leora's amber gaze held the warriors, unflinching, unyielding. No attack, no threat, no past victories could unseat the calm and resolve she exuded. She had not sought glory or conquest. She had sought survival, understanding, and the demonstration of a truth older than any empire. That human resilience, patience, and creativity were forces the galaxy could not ignore. Zarkath caught himself at the last moment, barely avoiding a fall, but the look in his eyes had changed. Fear, respect, awe, and disbelief intertwined. The deadliest warrior in the galaxy had faced countless foes, yet none had ever challenged him so completely without lifting a weapon, without speaking a word, without needing to strike. The moment passed, but the lesson endured. Leora, the silent human girl, had reshaped the rules of engagement. She had demonstrated that strength alone could not conquer the human heart, that cunning, intuition, and unyielding resolve could turn the seemingly impossible into reality. For the first time in centuries, Zarkath lowered his blade not in defeat but in recognition. He had been tested, and in that test he had seen the power of humanity. A species small in size yet vast in potential. The galaxy itself seemed to pause, acknowledging the unspoken victory of endurance over aggression, of mind over might. Leora's amber eyes softened, and though she remained silent, her presence radiated triumph. She did not boast. She did not strike. She had proven something far greater, that courage, adaptability, and resilience could overcome even the deadliest adversary, that even in silence humanity could roar. The wind rustled through the crystal forests, carrying the quiet announcement of her victory across the rivers, the cliffs, and the twin moons. The galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary. A single human, unarmed and voiceless, had crushed the legend of Zarkath, not through violence but through the indomitable spirit of her kind. Zarkath, standing precariously, met her gaze one last time. There was no fury now, only recognition and perhaps a touch of humility. He had been bested, not by strength, not by numbers, but by the quiet, unbreakable resilience of a human heart. Leora turned away from the edge, silent as ever, and walked back toward the forests of Arendor. The galaxy had shifted that day. Stories would spread, myths would be rewritten, and humans, small, fragile, underestimated, would be remembered not for what they lacked, but for the unimaginable power within their hearts. And in the silence, the galaxy finally understood. Sometimes, the quietest voice carries the loudest mess.